Hey everybody, it's Jack Rame again with another edition of Straight Talk with Jack. We're going to talk about a couple records today. Before I start talking about recordings, Beggs Groove, Miles Davis, we'll talk about that one here in a minute. Anyhow, thank you for being here and coming and checking out the channel again. And before we start talking about my things, you know, last night I sat here and watched a YouTube video from Dan, the Jazz Shepherd, regarding Blue Note for Beginners, I think he called it. And I have to tell you, if you're not subscribing to Dan's channel, you need to. Dan, you know, I've gotten very great comments, and thank you all for the comments you've left here and what I'm talking about. But I really have to ask you, if you're not already subscribing, and I bet a lot of you are, to Dan, please do. Dan is a wealth of information. I don't know Dan. I've never met Dan. We have not corresponded. I've left him some comments. He's replied back a couple times. But this is not a solicitation or an advertisement. But his knowledge is amazing. It's just well worth your time to listen to. I'm talking about Dan, the Jazz Shepherd. His channel is called The Jazz Shepherd, and he's just does a great job. Dan, if you watch this, thank you. One of the interesting things, Dan was talking about some of the masters of Blue Note, and he said something that really resonated with me. Over the years, people have always asked me, who are the three geniuses in jazz? And I've always answered them very quickly: Armstrong, Ellington, and Parker. And I heard Dan say the same thing last night. And, you know, if you really think about it, there's other great innovators, hundreds. But what those three gentlemen did for jazz and for American music, a lot of singers will tell you, Mel Torme, Bennett, Tony Bennett, Sinatra, they'll tell you that, you know, they listened to Armstrong. You know, when I was in college, I transcribed a bunch of Armstrong solos, and, you know, I woodshedded them. I played the trumpet. I woodshedded them, and, boy, I could play them. But I couldn't play them like Louis. You know, I practiced the solo from West End Blues like many young trumpet players did at the time. And we could play it. We could hit the notes. We could play it. But you could not play it like Armstrong. And I'm sure Louis couldn't if he recorded it 2 or 3 times. He wouldn't play it the same all 3 times. And I'm not talking about the notes. I'm talking about the inflection. And he's one of the really influential people that sang in the way he played, and the phrasing and the joy, you know. But those are the 3 guys, and I heard Dan say that last night, so that really resonated with me. But please, Dan the Jazz Shepherd, when you're done listening to this, please flip over and listen to some of Dan's things if you haven't already. You'll learn so much about the great history of this music. And, you know, we're going to talk about some records here that are 60 to 70 years old. What's playing here now was recorded, I believe, in Christmas Eve of 1954. Think about that. You know, that's a long time ago. And, you know, it still sounds great thanks to the preservation of the tapes and some of the modern editions that have recently been put out. And, you know, let's start off with that. I finally, after having it on back order for a long time, a couple days ago, Beggs Groove came in. This is a repress by Quality Record Pressings, of course, Analog Productions. And I haven't heard it yet, but I guarantee it's going to sound good. I see a lot of YouTube videos, and I'm not going to pick on anybody because some of them do a great job as well. But what you're not going to see here, I'm not going to open a record and talk about how great the jacket is, and this is mastered by Bernie Grundman or Ryan K. Smith or any of the great, great people who are doing some mastering these days, who really make this stuff sound the way it does. The jackets, for the most part, are great. The recordings, for the most part, are great. Anything pressed at RTI is going to be great. Anything that a good mastering engineer does is going to be great. So I'll leave that to the other folks. But anyway, getting back, sorry for the rant. Getting back to Bag's Groove. It's a great record. And it was one of the first records I ever owned. I think I was turned on to this, I'm guessing in, I don't know, probably in 63, 64, 10 years after it was recorded, as a kid. And just a little bit of history on this. First of all, this was recorded on Christmas Eve. Who works on Christmas Eve? Well, Miles worked on Christmas Eve. And I think Weinstock at Prestige came to Miles and said, "Miles, we want to make a record with you and the Modern Jazz Quartet." And Miles said, "Man, that's great." And they had everything set up for that, but Weinstock decided he wanted to introduce on a number of tunes here, actually just on the Bag's Groove tune, Thelonious Monk. Miles wasn't happy. He was good friends with John Lewis, the pianist in the MJQ. And Miles just said, "I'm not doing this." And finally, after I guess a pretty lively chat, Miles relented and said, "Okay, if it has to be Monk and Monk." And Miles and Monk got along well. But he really wanted to work with John Lewis. And I don't know whether it was Monk's comping or what he was doing in back of Miles, but when you listen to the beginning of Bag's Groove, Monk's not playing. And it's just Percy Heath and Miles, bass and drums, which is pretty interesting in itself. But at any rate, it's just a long story about this recording, and it's a great record. There are 3 or 4 other tunes that Sonny Rollins is on. Horace Silver's playing piano on them. Kenny Clark and Percy Heath stays and plays bass on them. But Bag's Groove was recorded on Christmas Eve, and of course the other tunes were recorded later in the year on Prestige. But for a record that's this old, man, it's just a great record. It's been re-released in mono here, and I guarantee it's going to sound great. I'm not going to go into the jacket and how quiet the vinyl is and all of that. I'm sure it's a wonderful record. Historically, it's one of those great historic records. I guess because of the story behind it. But great playing. Miles is just coming into kind of his notoriety in the mid '50s. I think he had completed. He had a pretty heavy drug problem prior to this record, but he was clean from this record on as far as heavy drugs go, and his playing really reflected that. But just a great record. And if you don't have this, I don't know if it's around. I think I looked on the InGroove in Phoenix, and I think it's sold out there, but I think Analog Productions, Acoustic Sounds, has stock on this. It's going to go away. It'll get repressed. It took me, I don't even know, months, 6-8 months for it to show up. I back ordered it. And like Chad Kasem at Acoustic Sounds says, buy now or cry later. Because A, it's going to be gone, will get repressed, But I guarantee you, with the price of vinyl, price of shipping, I bet the price goes up 20 bucks on this record. I think everything's going to go up because of, as you all know, what's going on here with the cost of goods. Anyhow, Bag's Groove on Prestige, 7109. It's a great record. You know, it's another record that I recently bought on vinyl. I had a copy on CD and listened to it. It's a good thing I had on CD because I would have wore out the vinyl. It's a great record. It's Clifford Brown's Study in Brown. Not to disparage Miles, and I love Miles. I love Miles' playing up to a point. But there are so many other great trumpet players that were playing at the same time Miles was. And I have to tell you, Miles had a style, and it was a great sound and a different style and all of that. But man, if you want to hear maybe the greatest trumpet player that ever shown up on the jazz scene, it's Clifford Brown. And I don't think it's close. Clifford he can play a ballad warm with so much feeling, intonation, inflection. Hear a lot of Armstrong in Clifford at times. You know, I think he was influenced a lot by Fats Navarro, Ted Dameron, who was not, you know, but anyway, Clifford is just a great player. This record is amazing. It's been reissued again, you know, by Acoustic Sounds, and I don't know who did the mastering on this. It might have been Smith. I'll tell you in a second. Staunton jacket, you know, it doesn't say on here who did the mastering, but it's going to be either Grunman or Smith or one of those guys. But I have a feeling this might have been done at Sterling Sound in New York, and that would make it really a great mastered. It was. It's in mono. I heard it last. I listened to it twice last night. Cherokee is the first tune on here. You see the label. It's the old MRC label. It's just a great record. And Cherokee, I would say it's maybe Clifford's best solo, and I think it's regarded as one of the greatest trumpet solos of all time in jazz. Hard Bop. This was recorded in New York. It's recorded in 55. This was about a year and a half before Clifford died at a very young age, I think 26, in an automobile accident with Richie Powell, the pianist on here. Richie Powell's, they were on their way to Chicago for a date, and it was raining on the Pennsylvania Turnpike prior to Route 80 that goes across the north part of Pennsylvania. That Pennsylvania Turnpike's a crazy road in places. And the car went out of control, and Clifford and Richie Powell passed. What a shame. There's not a lot of recording of Clifford. If I remember right, the only video that's been ever found of Clifford playing, believe it or not, was on the Soupy Sales show. Soupy was a comedian that had a show that was on late afternoon where I lived when I was growing up, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. How Clifford Brown got on there, I don't know, but I know they found a video of him on Soupy Sales. That's amazing. But the Cherokee is great. A-Train is the last cut on the second side. But this record, again, it's going to be a little bit hard to find once it goes out of press. It's not numbered. It'll be back, but it's going to go away. If you can find it now, just buy it. It's amazing. This was, I think, Clifford's 6th or 7th record he did. He formed the band with Harold Land on tenor and Richie Powell on piano. George Morrow worked with Basie, but joined the small group that Clifford and Max Roach founded in Southern California, believe it or not. But this record, I think, was recorded in New York. It's one of the, I think it was the first recording of that band in New York. The rest were done in California. But man, what a great record. Study in Brown on MRC. One of the first records I ever owned, I think I've talked about it in a prior video, is the very first recording that they did on MRC. This is a reissued, recently done last couple of years on Wax Time Records. I'm not a fan of Wax Time Records. I've got some really horrible quality recordings. Pressings aren't, the quality of the vinyl's not terrible, but they just didn't sound really, really good at all. And I don't know if it's whoever's doing the mastering or what, but this happens to sound okay. If you remember, if you folks have watched before, I had a Frank Sinatra, We Small Hours on Wax Time, and it was really pretty good. This is better than average for Wax Time. This is the very first jazz record I ever owned, and I think I was about 11, 12 when I got this. And of course, this is the famous recording with Daoud, Sandhu, Joyce Spring's on this. Joyce Spring, that was Clifford Brown's nickname for his wife, Joyce Spring. Jordu, just a great, Blues Walk is on this. Just a great record. It has a lot of memories for me, but you can't find a bad record that Clifford made really on MRC. They're all good. Study in Brown and this one is my favorite. It's been played a lot, but boy, you never get sick or tired of hearing this. Like I say, not to disparage Miles. Miles is an innovator, had a couple great groups, but I mean, he had Lee Morgan, and Dan made a great comment on the Blue Note thing. Only Freddie Hubbard really approached Clifford Brown. I totally agree with Dan. Clifford could play like a demon and play in tune and inflect. Very clean player. Excuse me. But Freddie, had that same kind of style. Lee Morgan was in that vein. Just some great trumpet players. And it's funny that everybody just gravitates to Miles Davis. And I love Miles. I've got a lot of Miles recordings. But don't miss the Clifford Browns and the Freddies and the Lee Morgans and the Kenny Durhams and Blue Mitchells and some guys that boy, you just overlooked, Booker Little. I mean, just some great trumpet players that aren't as popular as Miles because of the marketing. Columbia Records, man, they made a lot of money off of Miles, and they marketed him, and now his estate is just letting anybody and everybody press anything they want, which is good news and bad news. But at any rate, enough editorial on trumpet players. But I'm going to stay with trumpet players. I've been recently on a Harry Edison kick. Harry really was he bridged that gap between the big band era and kind of the end of the big band era. He worked with Basie for years. And, he was just really had a great sound, great technique, another great trumpet player. It's kind of overlooked. He's not a hard bop player. He's not a Clifford Brown. He's not a Lee Morgan. He has a totally different style. His tone and his intonation and his technique and his use of different mutes and different ways of making the trumpet sound is amazing. Some recent recordings, of course, I think I talked about this in a prior video, so I'm not going to spend time on Pablo Records. Pablo's division RCA had great recording facilities, and for the most part, they all sound pretty good, very good. And they're around. You can find them at reasonable prices. This is a record that Harry did with Oscar that I had already talked about. Talked about the one he did with Eddie Cleanhead Vinson recently in a prior video, and I might have mentioned this. I'm not sure I did, but I picked up a record in Seattle a couple weeks ago that Harry did with Eddie Lockjaw Davis, again another Basie alum. This is on the Storyville label, and I found a really clean copy. I think I only paid $3 for that record, and man, I'll tell you what, it's a great record. It's not the thickest vinyl you can find, but it's reasonably clean, and the copy is very clean. And Eddie Lockjaw Davis and Harry are two great players in the same vein, Basie alumni. But at any rate, this is a great record. Another interesting record that I just found on Discogs. I think I paid 10 or 12 bucks for this. It's a record Harry Edison did with Buck Clayton, and I think that Tommy Flanagan is on piano on this. It's a Japanese pressing, Japanese verve pressing, and it's really good. And I believe Elvin Jones is playing drums on this, so I'm not mistaken. But it's a real swinging record. Very good rhythm section, and it's available if you like Harry's playing, and he really swings on this. Buck Clayton was also a Basie trumpet player. Kind of, Harry and Buck had the same style, kind of, but they really work well together on this record. They go back and forth soloing, and it's just a cool record. On Verve, the sound is really well done as well. This was done in the I believe in the early 60s, 62, 63. Not everything that I find is a winner. I found a clean copy of Harry Edison, patented by Edison, on Roulette Records. Interesting. That's another. I'm sure Dan could talk about this as well, but Roulette Records has quite a history to the label. But at any rate, I know that Elvin's on this as well, and I can't remember who plays with the rhythm. They don't list the personnel on this record, and I'm trying to remember. They're players that you'd all know, and again, I think Elvin Jones is on this record, if I'm not mistaken. It's a clean copy. The vinyl sounds good. There was not hardly any scratches on it. This is a British pressing on the Roulette label. But the problem with this record, and you may want to listen to it on YouTube before you buy it, and I should have known, when I see 6 cuts aside that are 2 to 3 minutes long a piece, you pretty much know it's not going to be a great record. And you know, the tunes are nice. They're all standard tunes. Witchcraft is on this, you know. Blue Skies, 8 Misbehavin', Tea for Two. Angel Eyes, great tune. But, you know, they only last 2 to 3, a little over 3 minutes a tune. And, man, you can't really get anywhere when you're constrained with that timing. This is evidently a very commercial record that was made by Roulette. I'm not going to go into it, but Roulette was allegedly controlled by the Genovese crime family in New York. I guess maybe it was a way to launder money. I don't know. But they did let the musicians do pretty much what they want. A lot of great players recorded Roulette. Basie, you know, a lot of great players showed up on Roulette. I believe it was a gentleman by the name of Marv Levy or Mo Levy, who was a mobster, was one of the founders of the company. And I think he got indicted for stealing money, and I think he was supposed to go to prison, but I think he died before he went to prison. It's a long story about Roulette. You can just Wikipedia it, and you'll read about it. It's an interesting label. They had great players, and they let the players kind of do what they want. This record, you know, it's nice that I have it. I like the cover, but tunes that run 2 or 3 minutes just don't make it in my book. I think I might have talked about this too. I listened to this again last night on Pablo. Edison Lights with Harry Edison. Jimmy Smith, not the organist, the drummer. John Hurt on bass. Dolo Coker's on this. And William Basie. William Basie. Wonder who that could be. The kid from Red Bank. On Pablo. This is a great